This right here is what makes this job difficult. Nvidia just got a subpoena from the Department of Justice. The stock was already down 9%. The entire stock market at the time that we are doing this video is down in September. It's all bad right now. So what should we do as investors? What does this mean for Nvidia? What does it mean for the entire stock market, even if you are not investing in Nvidia? What in the world is going on right now? Let's go ahead and break it down. So first, let's talk about the job part, okay? The job of doing this, okay? Running a channel, educating people, talking about the stock market, it's difficult because a lot of times I try to get ahead. All right, you know, I got kids, I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff. You know, you can only record so much in advance, which I don't get the luxury of doing because when news drops like this and I don't have a crystal ball and I can't tell the future, people will text me or I will do my research and boom, you get a notification that tells you that, hey, this breaking news happens with the most valuable company on the face of the earth and you got to talk about it right now, okay? And it just blows up your entire schedule. Okay, so I gotta talk about it. I gotta rearrange my schedule. I don't know when this video is gonna come out, but for our members only, they are seeing this on Tuesday. Everybody else is gonna see when it's here. Okay, but I'm gonna try to make this as urgent as possible. But what is this subpoena? What does it mean for us, the entire stock market, and obviously for Nvidia investors? I just scribbled this on the back of an envelope because it is urgently happening and it is going to mean something for everybody, even if you're not investing in Nvidia. So number one, a subpoena is basically a legal document where you got to answer some questions to the Department of Justice, and this centers around anti-competitive practices. Basically, like, they think you are a monopoly and you are doing some things, or near monopoly, not a total monopoly, but you're doing some things that are illegal and you are shutting some other competitors out. Now, this is interesting because this Department of Justice under the current administration has been doing this. They have done it to Google. They have tried to do this to Apple way back in the day. They did it to Microsoft, and basically trying to, you know, elbow and say, look, you can't, you know, bully other competitors. We want to have a marketplace where other companies can compete because they believe that it is better for consumers. That is a different argument that you can have. As an economist, I would probably argue that that is likely true, right? There are pros and cons to each side of this argument, but usually the more competitors you have, that is usually pretty good for consumers because we get to choose what we like and what we don't like. You usually don't want to have just a handful of companies that you can choose from and that's just it, right? That usually doesn't help us because they can all raise prices and it puts us in a bad position. But that is the thing. And when these headlines tend to drop, that usually does not help the stock. Now the thing is, this dropped, and the time I'm doing this right now, it is about 5:45. So this is the stock for Nvidia had already dropped 9%. So when the market opens on Wednesday, I don't know where the stock is going to go. Okay, I don't know where the entire stock market is going to go for the rest of September. So this is like bad on top of bad. I do not imagine this is going to go well for Nvidia in the short term. Keyword is the short term. Now, what does this mean? Okay, so implication is at some point there could be a trial, and at some point, this is all long term, you could break up the company. Right now, that could be, that was the implication for Microsoft. That eventually that did not happen, but that was the entire impetus here. Because I'm not going to give you a whole history lesson of the 1990s and early 2000s, but that was what happened with this Windows operating system. That is what the Department of Justice tried to do with Microsoft back in the day, and they kind of learned that lesson in a sense. That's what is going on with Google, and Google and Apple had a deal basically, and that is kind of what is happening in the search industry. Apple got slapped with some fines in Europe for doing something very similar there too. So a lot of government entities are pushing on tech to, you know, change and be less competitive, right, or more competitive, depending on how you want to look at that, to let other players in and loosen their grip on the competition. So even if you don't invest in Nvidia, this is still going to have a major impact on you. And the reason why is because the way the stock market is weighted, and I've talked about this many times before, And I forget what the exact number is, but like the top 5 or 10 companies make up close to 25% of the entire returns of the stock market. Even though Nvidia was down 9% or so on Tuesday, it was still up 141% this year so far. If Nvidia falls and continues to fall, that's going to bring down the entire S&P 500 by itself. And if Nvidia falls, that's going to drag down other tech stocks, even though it's not those other tech stocks' fault. Today, again, the NASDAQ was down about 2, almost 3%, mostly because Nvidia fell, which again is not fair, but that is how the tech market and the entire stock market is fixated, because Nvidia is the 900-pound gorilla. Everybody else is just a bunch of ants. And when you're on a seesaw with a gorilla and an ant, you're going to go where the gorilla is, like it or not. And that's kind of where we are right now with the entire stock market, and just how Nvidia has just taken up so much space. So that is the situation that we are all in. It's a situation we've been all in one way or another. It's just at one point it was Nvidia, before that was Microsoft, before that was Apple, and we just keep switching out who that gorilla is and the logo in that spot. But this is where we are right now with Nvidia. What should you do if you own shares of Nvidia, and what should you do as an investor as a whole? I'm glad you asked. Weeks ago, I talked about what happens in what happens in September, and why September just tends to be one of the worst months of the stock market. So far, that has been true. Now, so far, it's only been one trading day. Okay, so I'm not crystal ball. I'm not a predictor of the stock market or anything like that. But if you want to check out what that video was, what we talked about, definitely go check that video out after this. Okay, but this just could be bad luck. Okay, it could be bad luck. It may or may not, I don't know, could weigh down the stock market for the rest of the month. It could be a whole bunch of headlines from this point forward. This is very, very new, and it came out, I'm recording this video rather, within the first 10 or 15 minutes of this happening. Now, whether you see it within the first 10 or 15 minutes, different story, okay? But this, again, is breaking news at the time that we are doing this. Again, we'll see what happens. But number one, for investors, you still don't want to panic. Number two, I did tell you guys months ago, especially for investors of Nvidia, to start trimming. I did say that. Okay, you can check out that video here. And as somebody who has invested in Nvidia for quite some time, I said that I'm still going to hold Nvidia, but I'm going to rebalance. I'm going to trim just a little bit. I'm still going to hold some, but I'm going to sell off just a little bit here and there to reduce my holdings in it, because I was up so much, but I don't want to continue holding on and taking on too much risk. This is why. This is not something that I ever would have predicted. It's never something that you would have predicted with any stock. If you could have predicted it, then you wouldn't have done it. I think that's just something across the board, right? Any risk that we would have predicted with any single stock, we wouldn't invest in it if that were the case, right? So this is why I have that schedule of, hey, it's June, hey, it's December, hey, it's whatever date, let me go back and trim and reduce my risk. And also, this is why you want to diversify. When I talk about the top 5 stocks in X category, or the top dividend stocks in X category, or what have you, I talk about, hey, these aren't in tech. You might want to consider investing in energy, or in finance, or in insurance stocks, which is also part of finance, but you guys get the point, because tech might not be the best thing for all time, always. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But if, right, in case of the risk of this, maybe you want to have some money in these categories so that you don't have everything all in one spot. Because if it does not do well on a day like today, it might not work, right? And this is one of the reasons as to why. It is lessons like this. Now, again, long term, a day like today might not matter. Keyword is might. Now, I don't know, again, is this going to end up in a lawsuit? I don't know if Nvidia is going to break up. I don't know where it's going to go. But this could be, like the Microsoft thing, could be something that lasts years and years and years. It could be something that doesn't even last 10 months because there's still an election. Someone else could come in office, drop this entire suit, regardless of who wins on either side of the party, because we know it is a guarantee that an administration is going to change. With that could come a new Department of Justice that may or may not care about this particular suit. Who knows, right? We literally do not know whether this is something that's going to matter with the next administration. They could be more aggressive or less aggressive. We don't know, okay? So I don't think this is an opportunity for you to absolutely panic and sell and get rid of everything. I still think it makes sense to remain calm, which is always my advice, and just take a look back and say, let me just look at my entire portfolio. Do I have like 90% of my portfolio in tech? Do I have too much in Nvidia or any one stock? Maybe I should take a measured approach and just even things out across the board. This could be an opportunity to do so. And because the stock market might, keyword might, be down in September, maybe I can find some discounts across the board, buy some things for cheap, and hold for the long term. Okay, hold for the long term. But again, not a time to panic. It may affect us all across the board. And this could also be an opportunity to buy things on the cheap and hold for the long term, because it is how you do make it big in the stock market. It's not going to be something that is an overnight fix or something that's going to make you rich very quickly. Like that's just not the process. But the main thing is, this could be something that is very big. It could also be something that blows over and nobody remembers because the Fed can lower rates and we all just forget about this entire thing. That's also something that is in the cards, because the Fed is going to announce at some point here pretty soon what they're going to do with interest rates. A lot of question marks in September, and that could absolutely flip what we think September even means for the stock market. This is why, again, I'm not going to panic. You could panic sell today, and then they say we're going to lower interest rates. Everybody gets excited. Stock market takes off. Okay? This is why I'm not buying or selling right now. I'm staying firm and leaving my portfolio alone. Remember, doing nothing is still a strategy. Doing nothing is perhaps one of your best moves. Okay? So that is still a strategy. That is, something else I would tack on. I was going to talk about some of the ways to survive September. That was one of the original things I was going to talk about this week. Then this Nvidia thing happened. So had to shuffle some things. But the Nvidia thing is going to kind of shock the stock market. I would expect, it's probably the word I should use. I expect this to shock the stock market just a bit. Again, don't panic, remain calm. Keep an eye out on what this could do for the market as a whole. But again, it is interesting. It is interesting, and it's going to be even more interesting on what could happen with the next administration and where this goes, because I could argue that both administrations can have a hostile view towards tech, depending on whether it's social media or hardware or software or what have you. So if you want to know other ways that you can protect your portfolio and exactly what happens in September historically, these are the videos that you want to watch next.